Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're here, Dr. Yakoob Ahmad. If we just pan to the right, this is he's going to explain it better than I can, but this is the Yildiz Camii, the masjid built by Sultan Abdul Hamid II. And we're very fortunate to have with us today an expert on the life and times of Sultan Abdul Hamid, my dear friend and teacher, Dr. Yakoob Ahmad. So inshallah, he just told us that he's going to explain the outside of the masjid to us before we go in. So I thought we'd get this on video and it can be a resource for the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ to benefit from, inshallah.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. This feels really, I feel like a presenter now. So actually, if you step back a little bit, I don't know what the sun is, it's the sunlight, but you can't see the dome yet. I'll show you the dome later. So this is the front facade of the mosque door. And basically this is done in a neo-Gothic style. And then we call it the Ottoman neo-Gothic style. And this was an interesting shift in the way that they were now starting to build their mosque. This is the first type of mosque like this. There is another one in Salonika, which is similar to this. And basically in the Hamidian period, they were moving towards creating a unique style of mosque structure, which is to maintain the old forms, but then to what we call modernize in terms of the contemporary sense. It has one minaret. Usually the sultanic mosques have more than one minaret, as you know. Where this is a time of austerity, so they kept it as one.
What do the amount of minarets symbolize? The Sultan Ahmad's got like 6.
So Sultan Ahmad was an exception. Usually it's 4 minarets is an indication that it's a sultanic mosque.
Right.
2 minarets means it's it's a mosque of somebody who's important, like a Grand Vizier, a daughter of the Sultan and whatnot. Sultan Ahmed built 6, which was controversial at the time. And then as a way of bypassing that, because Masjid al-Nabawi had 6, they built an extra minaret in Nabawi to make it 7. But at the time, people were not happy that he built a mosque with 6. But he was the first sultan not to go on the ghazl. So then he needed to build a mosque, which they say he was a part of the building process as a way of trying to...
By ghazl, you mean holy war or
yeah,
jihad,
that's right.
Which you can say in this country.
Yes, you can. That's right. Now, behind you can see is a clock tower. So you just swing round. Okay, so Abdul Hamid was obsessed with clock towers because one of the things that he felt was that his ummah should be on time. And so he built clock towers all over the Ottoman domains. And this is one in his mosque, as you can see here. And if you look carefully, the letters, or the numbers, should I say, are very unique because they're neither Arabic nor are they Western. They're sort of an amalgamation of the two in that sense. Now, inside is where the real, beauty of this mosque is, right?
Before we go in, Dr. Yakoob, we're in Besiktas.
That's right.
Which is, right now, probably one of the most secular parts of Istanbul, if not the most secular part. At the time Sultan Abdul Hamid built this masjid, what was Besiktas like?
Okay, so it would have been very different. This street here, so one of the things that they did during the formation of the Turkish Republic is to build a large road, which maybe you can't see, but you can see the houses, hopefully. And that separates the sort of population from the mosque itself. Now, this wouldn't have been a heavy residential area in fairness, but his palace, which is on the right-hand side, this is where the Jummah procession happened. So Abdul Hamid would have come down here in a horse and carriage into this section here, and this would have been filled with soldiers waiting for him to come. And on the horse and carriage would have been usually the Sheikh al-Islam and the Grand Vizier. Often many foreign...
This is where the Sultan Abdul Hamid would pray Jummah.
This is where he prayed Jummah, yeah. So this would have been the last sultanic mosque. This was the last sultanic mosque actually, because this was built in the 1880s. And then after that, another mosque wasn't built in Istanbul until 1950 when Menderes came to power.
What about, they have a mosque, they call it the last, on Google Maps it says, it's the last Ottoman mosque, the Valide Sultan Peren...
That's the last mosque, Perentivnial. That's not the last Ottoman sultanic mosque, this one is.
This is a sultanic mosque as opposed to just a general mosque that was built. That's very interesting. You talk about this idea that there was a road built to separate the population from the masjid. This is a conscious move to remove the religion.
It was done by a French Orientalist urbanizer by the name of Prost, who was famous in Algeria actually for doing the same. And then they brought him over here to try to change the urban landscape of this area as a way of trying to make it what they would call modernizing. Now, the intensification of the modernization process actually happened in the 1950s, which is a strange irony. On the one hand, it was a period where the Azan came back, and Arabic came back, and the Muslim vote helped Menderes come to power. But on the other hand, they had internalized the idea of being modernized, and they continued building boulevards and so forth to sort of change the areas and gentrify them to some degree. And this 19th century stretch, which is the Dolmabahce Palace, Yildiz Palace up here, the Yildiz Camii, the Dolmabahce Camii, the Yeni Abdul Majid Camii and so forth, you can see clearly that they have been sort of like separated out, which is a shame because Sultan Ahmed and Fateh and Suleymaniye, these are squares, right? And this is why they can maintain that. But even Sulaymaniyah and Fatih, people don't understand when they look at the monumental mosque structure, those were universities, okay? So now we call it Fatih Jami, but it was Fatih Madrasasi.
It's a complex.
It's a complex.
It's a town.
Yeah, basically it's
a
Oxford,
village, I believe.
right? And so all those people, if you look outside where it looks closed in Fatih, those would have been areas where students would have been learning. So at Salat al-Fajr, that mosque would have been packed. Sulaymaniyah, if you look around, they're selling food in those areas. They become cafes and restaurants, but those would have been residents of the students or rooms where they would have studied, and then that would have been the mosque they would have prayed in. So it was a madrasa complex. We're not allowed to build madrasa complexes anymore in Turkey. So
Right.
this is one of the things.
Just one more thing, in terms of the religious significance of Besiktas.
Yeah.
I mean, we came here, you took us to the grave of Sheikh Yahya Effendi, rahimahullah.
Yeah.
You took us to the grave of Sheikh Zafar Tunisi,
Yeah.
who was the Sheikh of Sultan Abdul Hamid.
Yeah.
We visited the Tekke.
Yeah.
So once upon a time, this would have been a hustling, bustling religious centre in and of itself. in
Yeah, I
Istanbul.
mean, this would have been very similar to other parts of, like Uskudar and so forth. I mean, like Uskudar and Fatih and Ayub are still unique, but for sure this would have been an area. I mean, even in those days, they wouldn't have had this concept like we have now, where these streets are full of bars and pubs. It would have been a very different neighborhood in that sense. Now, with the football stadium and the football fans, and then the building of the university and so forth, this area has changed a lot. And then since the Gezi protests, this area has once again shifted in the way that in terms of what it's become. But in the late Ottoman period, this area would have been totally different.
Okay, we're going to go inside the masjid now, so let's go.
Okay, so one of the things we do